This is the month that separates the salvia that blooms nonstop until frost from the salvia that goes leggy, stops flowering, and starts looking like a tired green stick with a few sad flowers on top. And the frustrating part is, almost nobody actually tells you why. The plant that was covered in spikes in May and June suddenly looks sparse, or the leaves start showing a white dusty coating, or the whole thing flops over after a good rain like it's given up. Most gardeners respond the same way every time. They fertilize more because the plant looks tired. They water more because the leaves are drooping. They shear the whole thing back, hoping it resets. Every single one of those thing back instincts is wrong. Those instincts is wrong for at least one of these problems. And in the case of overwatering specifically, doing the wrong thing in this month can take out a plant that would have otherwise handled 10 more years in your garden. Today I'm giving you exactly what salvia needs right now, and exactly what most gardeners do that guarantees weaker blooms for the rest of the season. Before we get into it, drop your US state or growing zone in the comments right now. Salvia care in July looks completely different if you're growing Salvia nemorosa in Minnesota than if you're growing Salvia greggii on the Gulf Coast. I want to make sure everything in this video actually applies to where you're gardening. I read every comment. Let's go. Number 1. Water deeply, then let the soil dry out completely before you water again. This is the single most misunderstood thing about salvia care, and it runs in the opposite direction from almost every other flowering perennial. Salvia is not a plant that wants consistent moisture. It is a plant that evolved in dry, sunny conditions, and it actually performs worse, not better, when the soil stays wet. The rule is simple. Check the top 1 to 2 inches of soil with your finger. If it's still damp, leave it alone. Only water once that top layer has fully dried out, and when you do water, soak it deeply so moisture reaches the root zone, then step away and let it dry again before the next watering. Here's why this matters so much in this month specifically. Heat stress and overwatering produce almost identical symptoms: wilting, drooping leaves, a plant that looks thirsty. And the instinct when you see a wilted salvia in 90-degree heat is to grab the hose. But if the soil underneath is already moist, more water is the exact thing pushing that plant toward root rot, which is the #1 cause of salvia death in home gardens. Once established, salvia genuinely tolerates dry spells better than almost anything else in a typical American border. Established plants can go through real drought stress and bounce back completely fine. What they cannot tolerate is sitting in saturated soil during the hottest, most humid weeks of the year. Water in the morning, water at the base of the plant, and always check before you water again. Tell me in the comments, is your salvia wilting in the afternoon right now? Before you touch the hose, go check the soil first and tell me what you find. Number 2, full sun, 6 to 8 hours, no exceptions. And here's what happens when it doesn't get that. Salvia is a full sun plant, period. Most varieties need a minimum of 6 hours of direct light, and several, including Salvia greggii and Salvia leucantha, perform best with closer to 8. When salvia doesn't get enough sun, the symptoms show up in this month even if the plant was planted in a spot that seemed fine in spring. The stems stretch and get leggy, reaching toward whatever light source they can find. Flowering drops off dramatically. Trials at Colorado State University found that even partial afternoon shade can cut bloom output by 40 to 60% compared to full sun. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between a salvia that puts on a show all summer and one that barely flowers at all. If your salvia looks stretched out with long bare stems and flowers only at the very tips, that is a light problem, not a fertilizer problem or a watering problem. And here's the part almost nobody mentions. The sun exposure your bed had in May is not necessarily what it has in July. As trees leaf out fully and the sun angle shifts higher through summer, spots that got full morning to afternoon sun in spring can end up in partial shade by midsummer once nearby trees or structures fill in. If your salvia is underperforming and you're sure you planted it in full sun, walk out at midday and actually look at how much direct light is hitting it right now, not what you remember from planting day. Number 3. Deadhead correctly and stop shearing the whole plant to refresh it. Deadheading is what keeps salvia blooming continuously through summer instead of putting on one flush and quitting. The technique matters here. Cut the spent flower spike down to just above the first set of healthy leaves or the next side shoot, not just snipping off the dead flower tip. This tells the plant to redirect energy into producing a new flowering stem from that point, rather than finishing out that spike's seed production. The mistake that costs gardeners bloom count every month is shearing the entire plant back hard in the middle of the season, thinking it will reset and flush out fresh. For varieties like Salvia nemorosa and Salvia X superba, the ones most common in American perennial borders, this removes developing flower buds and stresses the plant right when it should be pushing its heaviest bloom cycle. Deadheading individual spent spikes is precise and keeps the plant's energy where it belongs. A full midsummer shear down is a blunt instrument that costs you weeks of flowers you didn't need to lose. If this video is actually giving you information your salvia has needed, hit subscribe right now. This channel puts out zone-specific, no-nonsense gardening content every week, and it's free. Number 4, stop fertilizing, or at least stop overdoing it. Here's the truth most salvia content skips over. Salvia is not a heavy feeder. In a bed with reasonable organic matter, most varieties do fine on compost alone and don't need supplemental fertilizer at all through summer. If you've been feeding on a regular schedule because the plant looked like it needed a boost, this month is the point to stop and reassess. Over-fertilized salvia, especially with high nitrogen feed, produces soft, lush, top-heavy growth that flops over after rain or wind, and that same excess nitrogen actually suppresses flowering in favor of vegetative leaf growth. A plant that's flopping and underperforming is very often a plant that's being fed too much, not too little. If you do fertilize, a light application of a balanced, slow-release feed in spring is genuinely sufficient for most garden bed salvia for the entire season. Container-grown salvia is the one exception. Limited soil volume depletes nutrients faster, so a light feed can be reasonable there. But garden bed salvia getting fed all summer long is one of the more common ways gardeners accidentally sabotage their own bloom count. Number 5, know the difference between powdery mildew, root rot, and normal aging because treating the wrong one makes things worse. Powdery mildew shows up as a grayish-white powdery coating on the tops of the leaves, and it thrives specifically in humid, still air conditions where leaves stay wet without drying out. This is a July problem more than any other month because heat and humidity peak together right when air circulation around dense summer growth is at its worst. The fix is airflow and dry foliage. Space plants so air moves between them, water at the base rather than overhead, and if it's already present, a simple mix of water and baking soda applied to the leaves can knock it back in mild cases. Root rot looks different. Leaves yellow starting from the bottom of the plant. The whole plant looks weak rather than just dusty, and the cause is excess moisture sitting around the roots, not humidity in the air. This is where that watering rule from earlier becomes critical. If you're seeing yellowing from the base and the soil has been staying wet, root rot is likely already underway, and the fix is to stop watering immediately and improve drainage, not add more water thinking the plant is thirsty. And normal aging, a few yellow lower leaves dropping off an otherwise healthy, vigorously blooming plant, is just the plant doing what salvia naturally does as it puts energy into new growth. Don't panic and start treating a perfectly healthy plant for a disease it doesn't have. Hit the like button right now if this is the first time anyone's actually explained the difference between these three instead of just telling you to treat the fungus. Number 6. Check for pests, but don't panic. Salvia has fewer problems than almost anything else in your garden. Aphids occasionally show up on new tender growth, especially if you've been over-fertilizing and producing exactly the soft new growth aphids prefer. In most cases, ladybugs and lacewings handle these naturally within days, and you don't need to intervene at all. Spider mites are the pest most specifically tied to summer heat. They thrive under drought stress, so if you're seeing fine webbing and stippled, faded leaves, the fix is usually to increase watering frequency slightly, not spray first. Whiteflies and spittlebugs can also appear, but rarely cause serious damage on established plants. A strong blast of water from the hose knocks off light infestations without any spray at all. Insecticidal soap or neem oil handles anything more persistent. The key point here, most salvia pest problems in this month are a symptom of some other stress, usually drought stress or too much nitrogen, not a standalone infestation you need to spray your way out of. Number 7. Remember that not all salvia behaves the same way, and care depends on which one you're growing. Salvia nemorosa, the compact woodland sage most common in American perennial borders. Varieties like May Night and Caradonna blooms hard through June and July, and then August, then reblooms lightly with consistent deadheading. Salvia greggii, autumn sage, is far more prone to decline from overwatering, specifically in humid summer climates like the Gulf Coast, so drainage matters even more there. Salvia leucantha, Mexican bush sage, cannot tolerate soggy soil at all and needs full sun with sharp drainage to perform. If you're not sure which type you have, that difference changes how forgiving your plant is of a watering mistake this month. Here's your complete this month salvia checklist before you go. Water deeply, only when the top 1 to 2 inches of soil are fully dry, always at the base, never overhead in the evening. Confirm your plant is actually getting 6 to 8 hours of direct sun right now, not what it got in spring. Deadhead spent spikes down to the next healthy leaf or side shoot. Never shear the whole plant midsummer. Stop or scale back fertilizer if the plant is flopping or all leaf with few blooms. Correctly identify powdery mildew versus root rot versus normal leaf drop before you treat anything. Don't panic over minor pest activity. It's usually a symptom, not the core problem. And know your specific salvia variety, because a Gulf Coast Salvia greggii and a Minnesota Salvia nemorosa need different levels of caution around water this month. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell, and before you go, drop 2 things in the comments. What state or zone are you gardening in, and what does your salvia actually look like right now? I read every single comment, and your answers shape exactly what this channel covers next. Now, go check your salvia. Check the soil before you check the hose.